here is this guy who was the prince in his country of Zamunda, could have just taken the easy life that was given to him, but he wanted something more. And he was willing to strip all of that away to kind of start over and say, I want to earn this position that I have. I want to show people that I'm more than just somebody who was born into royalty. And so what he teaches us there is the difference between earned leadership and unearned leadership. So unearned leadership creates pleasers and earned leadership creates believers.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. 20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of 20-Minute Leaders with Clews. Growing up in the 80s and with over 20 years of leadership experience in corporate marketing, Clews knew three things very well: 80s pop culture, business, and this crazy thing we call life. One day in his mid-40s, he was on his couch having a self-pity party over one job that wasn't working out for him. Flipping channels, he stopped on the classic 1983 movie The Outsiders and literally jumped off his couch when he heard Johnny Cade say, "You still have a lot of time to make yourself be what you want." Yes, he does still have a lot of time to make himself what he wants, he thought to himself. He left his corporate career of 20 plus years and combined his areas of expertise to create the popular book series, The Ultimate Series on Essential Work and Life Lessons from 80s Pop Culture, which includes 2 volumes of what 80s pop culture teaches us about today's workplace, with a third title scheduled to be released late September of 2022. Raised on the 80s, 30 plus unexpected life lessons from the movies and music that defined pop culture's most excellent decade. He parlayed the books into a keynote speaking career on the same topic. Clews, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Michael, for the megaphone. I want to say up front that I appreciate everything that podcasters, independent podcasters like you do. I've been asked often if hey, you should do your own podcast, but I know the hard work that goes into actually being the person who puts the podcast together. So I very much appreciate you spending the time doing that to give independent people like me a voice.
Well, the appreciation is mutual. Thank you. And there's a great team that's helping me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this. But really, for me, this is a gift so that I can learn from people like you about these different life experiences, different perspectives that you have. And like I mentioned right before we started, I'm particularly excited for this episode because this episode feels all about perspective and all about change and invention. And so I'm going to jump right into it. Chris, take me back to your 40s, to even before that. Tell me a little bit about your life career, sort of the different things you've done leading up to the different transition that made you do what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Take me back to your 40s. Gosh, it makes me feel like I've lived a little bit of a life. So yeah, I actually was in corporate marketing for a little over 20 years. And for those people who are in marketing, you know that once you kind of understand the marketing principles, you can kind of take those principles and apply them to really any industry. And so I bounced around a little bit at some ad agencies. I was with some larger corporations like DHL. I was with some smaller technology startups. So spent 20 plus years in corporate marketing. Prior to that, for a few years, when I moved after college, I moved to Orlando, Florida. And I started out working at Planet Hollywood and doing security for celebrities there, which is probably a whole nother episode. And then I got my opportunity in marketing. So as I said, 20 plus years there until about 5 years ago when I made this complete change in my career path.
What makes a person want to do a complete change like that? I mean, you were good at what you were doing. It sounds, from what you just told me, it sounded like you were doing quite a bit of things and you were moving around quite a bit. So what prompted you to make such a significant change?
So mine's a little bit different. So I was questioning a little bit about whether this was the career path that I really wanted. As I got into my 40s, I started thinking about, my legacy, and was it going to be that I was a pretty good marketing guy, and that was about it. And that was fine, but I wanted something more. So I was in a job that just wasn't working out. I think a lot of people had been there, and I was sitting on my couch having a self-pity party of one when The Breakfast Club came on. Iconic Generation X, which is my generation movie, The Breakfast Club. And Bender, the criminal or juvenile delinquent in the Breakfast Club, says, "Screws fall out all the time. The world's an imperfect place." Now, I had seen that movie multiple times, probably 50 or 60 times, and I had never heard that line. Screws fall out all the time. The world's an imperfect place. And so I sat up and I said, my screws have fallen out. I'm in an imperfect place. What am I going to do to put those screws back in? Am I going to put the same set of screws in and just keep going? As Henry David Thoreau said, not an 80s pop culture icon, 1840s maybe. The massive men, the massive people lead lives of quiet desperation. Was I going to keep doing that? Or was I going to get a whole new set of screws, a whole new door, and walk out to an entirely new journey? And that's what I did.
Wow. Okay. And so you're sitting there and you're saying a whole new journey. Do you know what that journey looks like? Or is it that what you know is that it's going to be a different journey?
I had no idea what it was going to look like. Although I will tell you that when I heard that screws fall out all the time, the world's an imperfect place, I felt like there was something I could do with that. And so I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn, what the Breakfast Club teaches us about problem solving. And I got this great response to it, really amazing response to this article. And I thought, maybe I have something here that people are curious about. So I wrote one on Ferris Bueller and work-life balance and got a great response as well, and decided to write a little book. Figured out with a friend how to self-publish, wrote a little book. Then I thought, what else can I do? And at this time, I had a full-time corporate marketing job, and I was doing this on the side at nights and on weekends. And I built a website, never done that before, built a website, positioned myself as a speaker on this topic of what 80s pop culture can teach us for work and for life. And before you know it, I'm sitting here today, September 27th, 2022, as we're recording this, and my third book just launched today. And I'm a keynote speaker around the country, talking to organizations about lessons from 80s pop culture.
Amazing. Okay, so I have to ask, 80s lessons, life lessons from pop culture, 80s music, movies. What are some non-trivial things that you often talk about that leave people, thinking, wow, okay, this is something relevant to me. This is something that I can learn from that I never realized when I watched this movie or listened to the song.
Yeah. So what's really cool is I believe that some of the best lessons for our life and our workplace come from the most unexpected of places. So I really look for some of these characters in movies where you don't expect to learn something, but you actually do. And I'll give you a great example. One of them would be the movie Coming to America, which in my opinion is, it's a great comedy, but it's also a romantic comedy.
Eddie Murphy, right?
Eddie Murphy. Yes. Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, James Earl Jones. Great cast, great movie. One of the great romantic comedies of all time, in my opinion. So Prince Akeem in the movie Coming to America, for those of you that don't know, he is born into royalty in his country of Zamunda. And everything that he has is given to him because he's the prince. He was just born into it. But as he gets older, he realizes, this isn't what I want. I really want people to like and love me for me. And I don't want things given to me as easy as they are here as the prince. And so he decides that he is going to go to Queens, New York, from his country of Zamunda, and he's going to find his queen. Queens, New York, find his queen. And so he takes a job at a fast food restaurant called McDowell's. And he gets an entry-level job there, sweeping the floors and picking up the garbage, taking out the garbage. And he says this great line, again, another line that you just wouldn't pay attention to, but it hit me, which is, when you think of garbage, think of Akeem. And this line resonated, or it stuck out to me, because here is this guy who was the prince in his country of Zamunda, could have just taken the easy life that was given to him, but he wanted something more. And he was willing to strip all of that away to kind of start over and say, I want to earn this position that I have. I want to show people that I'm more than just somebody who was born into royalty. And so what he teaches us there is a difference between earned leadership and unearned leadership. So unearned leadership creates pleasers and earned leadership creates believers. So we've all been around people who didn't maybe earn their leadership position. And what happens? They have yes people around them, right? Yes men and yes women. Whatever you want, we'll do. There's no questioning. There's no challenging. They don't know how to act around the leader. The leader doesn't really know how to act as a leader because they haven't earned that position. Earned leadership creates believers. And, we see this in Coming to America. At the beginning, everybody just wants to please him. We see him being set up on a date or an arranged marriage, and he's asked her, "What do you like?" And she says, "Whatever you like." "What kind of food do you like?" "Whatever food you like." And he doesn't like this. He really wants somebody to be an individual, be themselves. And so he takes this job, cleaning the floors and taking out the garbage. And it really teaches us a valuable lesson about earning your leadership position and how that creates credibility. And not only that, but employee retention. If I'm an employee and I can see a path to leadership, then I'm probably more likely to stick around than if I just look up and I look at all the leaders and say, how did they get there? And if they didn't earn it, how am I supposed to get there? So that's one example.
Why is it so powerful coming from pop culture? I mean, because these are lessons that, we could sit down and come up with a few of these great lessons and write articles about them, and they will be convincing and they'll make sense. Why is it different when it's coming from an unlikely situation, in your opinion?
Love that question. So I believe the reason is that I think that when we aren't expecting to learn, we actually retain more information. We retain it more. So if I put you in a classroom and I say, okay, you're going to learn today. Sure, you're going to be paying attention. You've got your notes. You're ready to take notes and pay attention. But because you're kind of expecting to learn, I'm not so sure how much you retain it. I mean, case in point is that we have to all go back and study after, class or learning something in a learning environment, a learning setting. But when we learn something from an unexpected place, like a movie or a character or a line of dialogue, I believe that we retain it more. And we take it with us into our journey, whether it's life or in the workplace. And when that particular situation presents itself, we're actually able to take what we learned and we can attribute it to somebody or something and say, oh, wait a minute, Prince Akeem, that's right. That's where I learned that from. Instead of just, again, learning it from a book or a class or some PowerPoint slides of people coming together, I believe we retain it more when A, we're not expecting to learn, and B, when we have somebody or something tangible to point to and say that's what I can grasp in this situation to teach me to reteach me a little bit more.
Right. And it almost sounds like in therapy when a lot of times psychologists would, they want you to get to the understanding yourself or to get to the situation yourself in your mind, because then you'll actually believe it and retain it and maybe they've understood it for weeks or months in treatment, but they want you to get to that realization yourself, because if they just spoon feed it to you, it won't be something that you'll take with you. But if it's something that you comprehend yourself, which sounds like it has similar type of notion here, if you experience now something like Prince Akeem and you say, okay, wow, now this actually speaks to me because, and you're internalizing it for your own personal situation, it sounds like it's much more powerful. What have you found as you've been sharing these with different people around the world? What have you been finding as the reception to these?
Really positive and fun, and people think it's very different, which I love. I think it's important to find things that are unique and different, and the feedback has been great. Oftentimes when I come off stage after speaking, doing a keynote with an organization, and I come off stage, people will come up to me and they're really surprised. They think, I never thought that I could learn something from Jess Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, for example. And it's true. I mean, I didn't think I could learn from him either until just, 5 or 6 years ago when I started pulling all this together and looking at these movies and these characters in a little bit of a different way. And so that's really what I get. The feedback that I get is people are really surprised that they can learn from these places that they didn't expect to learn from.
Right. And so tell me a little bit about your own process for creating these discoveries. Do you tell me, from the setting, how is this whole thing taking place?
Well, I'm lucky enough to make a living talking about 80s movies and 80s pop culture, which makes me super happy. So my research is watching 80s movies and listening to 80s music, which I still can't believe. I'll tell a quick story. I was in the airport about 2.5 years ago, getting ready to go to a keynote, and I wear these funky Vans with always like a funky design. I think when you have like cool shoes like that, it's kind of it's a talking point, and it's good because I'm not somebody who's going to walk up randomly to someone and start talking to them. So having a talking point like that is nice. And this guy sat next to me and he said, yeah, those are cool shoes. And I said, thanks. And I said, they're my stage shoes. And he said, stage shoes? What do you do? I said, I'm a keynote speaker. I'm heading to a conference. He said, oh, what do you talk about? And I said, I talk about the lessons from 80s movies and 80s pop culture. And he looked at me and he said, how the hell did you pull that off? And I knew in that moment that I was actually doing something that somebody else wanted to do. And that was a really incredible moment for me to be able to say, like, wow, I'm actually doing something that other people would want to do. And that was kind of an epiphany for me. Going back, Michael, to the question you asked, can you repeat it again?
The process that you do the research, how does it actually take place? You're sitting there and you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
What's going through your head?
So this is a great question. So what's really interesting is that I actually, first and foremost, I think about the movies that I really enjoy, and then I go to the IMDb database, and the IMD, is the IMDb. Sorry, is the movie database, and I go there and I look up the quotes from the movie, and I say, this is a movie that I want to talk about. Coming to America, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Trading Places. And I go to the quotes and I start looking at the quotes and I think, there's a quote that I can actually build a lesson around. There's something I can use. And so it starts with one quote and then I build the lesson and the story around that particular quote. That's really how I do it.
Wow. Very, very cool. Okay. There's a lot more questions that I want to ask about this field, but there's something else that I want to bring up as well. A little bit about your advocacy work. You shared in one sentence right before we started here, and immediately sparked my attention. Tell me a little bit about the things you're doing outside of this full-time job.
I appreciate it. So I'm a huge animal rescue advocate. It's really important to me. I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that was, full of animal rescue advocates. I have a 80-pound pit mix sitting at my feet right now, and he's a rescue. I got him about 2 years ago, and he was 6 months old. He was basically dead on the street at 3 months old, laying on the sidewalk, couldn't walk, couldn't go to the bathroom, essentially paralyzed. A couple of police officers found him, scooped him up, took him to a rescue that I followed, Wonder Paul's Rescue in Fort Lauderdale. And they worked very hard to get him walking again, and a couple of months of rehab and at a foster. And then I got him at 6 months old, and he's the best. He's my best friend. So I'm a huge advocate of animal rescue. I actually donate a portion of the proceeds from my book sales and my speaking gigs to Wonder Paul's Rescue, which is the rescue that saved Bodhi. There's a great movie, another great movie from the 80s, Dead Poet Society. And John Cade, played by Robin Williams, says, no matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world. And he's right, they can. And in the palm of our hand, we have an opportunity to put our words and ideas out to the world. It's the great equalizer. You don't have to be a celebrity, politician, world leader to get your words and ideas out to the world. You can do it in the palm of your hand. Anybody. That's walking the walk. That's talking the talk, but you've got to walk the walk as well. So what action are you going to take with your advocacy to make a difference? And for me, it was volunteering at animal rescues prior to having Bodhi, and now it's doing what I can from a time and resource perspective to not just donate to these organizations, but also promote them on my social media as well. There's some great organizations that do work with bully breeds that I advocate for. So that's my legacy. I tell people that when they're asked, what's the best breed of dog? I said, rescued is the best breed.
I love that. And so tell me a little bit about walking the walk and what you've learned about the rescue world. I'm personally involved a little bit with that as well. What has been sort of your take on this today? And anybody listening here, obviously, so many people are interested, are saying, yes, of course, we want to take part, but then that it ends there. So what are different things that you've learned that would be useful?
Well, here's the good news. It's very easy to find a place to volunteer when it comes to animal rescue. They all need help. The people that run those organizations work tirelessly to promote and to save the animals that we all love. And so you can go, if you just do a quick Google search in your local area, you could find a number of different organizations that could use your help. It's as simple as, a shelter near you being a dog walker. That's a really simple thing to do. You sign up, you do usually a half a day training, and you can come and walk the dogs anytime you want. And believe me when I tell you that the difference it makes in a dog's life just to get out of that kennel and that shelter and walk for 30 minutes outside. Makes a huge difference. And remember, people walking through those shelters are looking mainly for happy dogs. But it's hard as the dog has been there a little bit longer. It gets harder for them. They they lose hope just like we would lose hope. And so just something as simple as dog walking, if you're unable to do that, there are tons of organizations that you can donate to if you have a type of dog that you believe strongly in. And if you just go on Instagram and you search, or go on Facebook and you search for a particular breed that maybe you have an affinity for, there are a lot of organizations that could use, not just donations, but also your support when it comes to volunteering. There are so many out there. It's a very easy industry to find a place that needs help.
Yeah, definitely. Well, amazing work on that end. And going back to your work on, the different lessons from pop culture, I think it's so cool to meet people that have made these significant transitions to something that they're so excited about, and they create value out of something that they're passionate about. And so I'm really excited to read the new book coming out today myself, and to hopefully see some of these keynote presentations live, because they just sound so cool and so relevant for anybody, and so universal on one hand, but very meaningful, it sounds like, on the other hand. And so really, thank you very much for the time and the energy, Chris. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to share this with the world and continue making a positive impact on animals, humans, everyone. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Michael. Hey, can I just point out one quick thing?
Of course.
There's a lesson that is for everybody who's listening. It's in The Outsiders, Johnny Cade, played by Ralph Macchio, at one point says, you still have a lot of time to make yourself be what you want. And that is true for everybody. You're never too old or too young to make yourself be what you want. So just remember that.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Stay rad, everybody.